The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
According to the 2024 BC Prosperity Index, British Columbia places 11th out of 21 peer jurisdictions for overall prosperity. The report was developed with the Centre for the Study of Living Standards, which compares BC's performance on a range of economic, business, social, and environmental indicators. David Williams of the Business Council of British Columbia says there's no medal for 11th place, and for good reason. He says prosperity matters for young families and people aspiring to build a future in this province. Prosperity, he emphasizes, is crucial. The report is filled with disheartening numbers about BC's place on the Prosperity Index, an index that says British Columbia is 11th of 21 jurisdictions in business well-being, 15th in economic well-being, 7th in societal well-being, 12th in labor productivity, 13th in the innovation as far as ranking, 13th in income inequality, and 18th for housing affordability. I invited David Williams, the Vice President of Policy at the Business Council of British Columbia, to join me for a conversation that matters about the factors that are driving down prosperity in BC and what we can do to reverse this trend. David, welcome.
Hi, Stu. Thanks for having me.
When I read the report, I couldn't help but go, ouch. Is it really bad? Because, overall, we come in kind of in the middle of the pack. Isn't that kind of where we deserve to be as a jurisdiction, or are we underperforming?
We're middling. Middling. We produced this report in 2019. Back then, it was based mostly on 2017 data. This time, we're calling it the 2024 Prosperity Index. Most of the data for most jurisdictions is 2022 data. And what we find is when you look across business well-being, economic well-being, and societal and environmental well-being, we're about the middle of the pack. We're about average overall. But within that, there's some nuances. So if we're comparing BC to other provinces, we do all right. We look all right. But if you're comparing BC to international jurisdictions, not so good. We're underperforming relative to other jurisdictions. Canada and BC, the other provinces are in a similar boat. And particularly when you look at social and environmental indicators, we tend to look above average compared to international jurisdictions. But then if you compare BC and the other provinces on business well-being and economic well-being, we tend to sort of be average or below average on that.
Which has an impact on per capita GDP. In other words, people's real take-home pay. And the thing that I find quite interesting about this is that I try and talk to people about this and they go, I don't know, it doesn't look so bad here, even though they recognize that affordability is high. Is part of our challenge that we're not motivated to do something about this because, as you said, it looks okay?
It's one of the 12 indicators, GDP per capita. So just for your viewers to understand, that stands for gross domestic product. That's the total income that all households and businesses generate in an economy in a year. And we care about that on a per capita basis because that's the income that we take to the grocery store, to the petrol station, to pay our mortgage. That's what we use to feed and clothe our families. And what concerns me is that if you look at the 2024 provincial budget, page 99 to be specific, the government has forecast there for real GDP per capita, and it's falling. So
even the government recognizes this.
In 2028, the government is forecasting that real incomes on a per person basis will be lower in the province than they were in 2022. So you've got an outlook there for declining real incomes. Now, the only other way people can feel good about their standard of living, I guess, is by borrowing, and we've been doing that. Canada has the second most indebted households in the world. Most of that is mortgage debt. And if you're going to be having an economy which is heavily geared toward leveraging into real estate, it's going to push up prices. So if you've been a homeowner, you've had a pretty good run in terms of building your nest egg because your home has gone up in value. But what hasn't happened is the growth in the real incomes. And it's not happening into the future. As I say, BC looks a bit better than the rest of Canada on real incomes. Canada as a whole is looking pretty terrible in terms of real income growth compared to international jurisdictions. We're being left well behind, one of the worst performing economies in the OECD on an income per capita basis. But BC's done all right. And the reason we've done all right is these mega projects that have been taking place in the province. So I'm talking about Trans Mountain, Site C, LNG Canada, and Coastal GasLink. If you put those 4 projects together, they've contributed something like $65 billion to our economy over the last several years, since the mid-2010s. Just to give some order of perspective, our economy is worth about just over $300 billion. So $65 billion over several years. The economy as a whole is worth $300 billion just in 1 year. So it just gives you some sense of scale, just how enormous these projects have been. And they've been lifting up our economic performance relative to the other provinces. It's not great compared to international jurisdictions, but it's still, like, you know, if we're only looking at the Canadian provinces, it does lift us towards the top of the pile. The trick is, though, if you look at us overall for prosperity, we rank 11th with the impact of these mega projects. So I think one of the questions for British Columbians is, what does this look like without the mega projects? Because they are all completing or have completed or are winding down now. And there's not really much to take their place. So what does the province look like in the future as these wind up?
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Well, there's almost nothing to take their place. As you were talking about those 4 mega projects winding down, I had gone and taken a look at the National Energy Board application for new projects. And, you know, other than the news that came out this week about the Cedar LNG final investment decision, I don't see anything else in the pipeline. No pun intended there, but there's hardly anything. We've got wood fiber LNG, which is being built out, but it's not at the scale of LNG Canada. And so what does this say about where we're going? And do we have the right kind of environment and climate to attract the investment that we need to be able to continue to expand our economy? I'm not sure that BC really has "we're open for business" sign out.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we do. I think that's right. I know there's been a lot of talk about, for example, the lithium-ion battery plant to be built in Maple Ridge, and talking about that, you know, in the same vein almost as LNG Canada and Trans Mountain and the other mega projects I just mentioned. But the battery plant is worth $1.05 billion. Like, it's, you know, basically $1 billion. So we need another 64 of them before you can sort of talk about it in the same breath. And the question is, what happens next? Do we have an environment? I mean, we have the 4th highest top marginal tax rate in North America of any of the 60 US states and 10 Canadian provinces. And it kicks in at a little over $200,000. Now, that's not a lot compared to other jurisdictions. It only sounds a bit like it's a lot here because we have such low productivity and low incomes anyway. Right? But if in a global sense, that's pretty low. So if we're trying to attract head offices, top talent, we want to retain the best and brightest out of our universities, you know, are they really going to want to stay in British Columbia? I think that's a key challenge because, you know, they look to the US, they look to other countries, and they see I can earn a higher wage because productivity in that country is higher, and I don't have to pay as much income tax. It's not a good setup.
No, it's not a good setup. You know, I was just reading about this Abbotsford Tech District that proposed to be like a $5 billion project. And yesterday they announced that they're canceling it. And why? Because part of the challenge is that BC really does not look like it's open for business. They've been pouring in money and they haven't even got to a maybe yet. And Gavin Dew, who is leading up that project, he goes, this is becoming the malaise of British Columbia and Canada, we're really good at getting to a slow maybe. Years to get to maybe, not even yes.
That's right.
And so how then do we start to turn this around? Or do you actually think that it's possible that we can find a way of attracting new investment into British Columbia that's going to help us lift our numbers and give people the sense that there's a brighter future here in British Columbia rather than just more of the same?
I think it's a nationwide problem. BC is just part of that. We've been able to borrow and push up the price of our housing assets, so we haven't had to worry about productivity, business investment, and those sorts of things. And in BC, we've had the 4 mega projects. And all of these things have sort of masked what's really going on. We've used, we've ramped up immigration. We had 1.3 million newcomers last year. At that pace, you would be adding another British Columbia to Canada every 4.5 years. Now, what has that done? Well, of course, it increases GDP growth, and we've had governments feeling pretty confident about the types of the GDP growth that they've chalked up. But it's all population growth.
Yeah.
Once you adjust for population growth, and you're getting to, well, hang on, what's my share of the pie, the economic pie? It's shrinking. GDP per capita nationally has fallen for the last 2 or 3 years. Productivity has fallen outright for the last 3 years. Living standards are no better than they were in 2016. When you look at real incomes per person, the only place anyone's made any hay towards their nest egg is if they happen to be a homeowner and their property price has gone up due to this big leverage boom that we've all enjoyed. I think more fundamentally, going to your question, is that we're not having a conversation that real incomes going up is a good thing. And we've been a bit complacent about that. If you're a young person trying to build a future in the province, you don't want to hear that, that average incomes in the province aren't expected to grow across the outlook. That's extraordinary. I mean, that is just saying that opportunities have dried up, the ladder of opportunities being pulled up. You cannot make your way. And I think younger generations are really feeling it. If you look at any kind of polling data on Gen X, Y, Z, they are really struggling to feel optimistic that they can make a go of it. And they're leaving. So we've got very high rates of emigration to other countries as we lose our best and brightest. And BC is losing now. Interprovincial migration has turned negative. So traditionally, British Columbia has attracted more Canadian residents to the province than it lost to other provinces. That's been true for about 20 years, except for 1 year in 2012. But we haven't seen a net outflow of BC residents since for about 20 years. And now we're losing about 8,000 to 10,000. And if you dig into it, they are moving to Alberta and to other places where the opportunities they perceive are greater than here.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Well, and that's a real problem, because those people who you would say are in the productive class of society, we need them to be here, especially if we want to build the kinds of products and services that we can sell outside of the BC economy so that we can bring in external revenue.
Yeah.
I was talking to a couple of women who were in their early 30s who had moved to British Columbia in the last couple of years. They love it here. But they both said, like I said, are you going to stay? And they went, maybe, but not if I'm going to start a family. And I went, why? And they said, I cannot, in my mind, the vision that I have of the home that I want to raise my family in, I can never afford it in British Columbia. So if I make that decision, that will be the tipping point. As a young family, I can't stay. Well, so then we not only lose that talented person and their family, but then the future generations that go somewhere else as well.
Yeah, it's been a really challenging time. I mean, I mentioned the population growth earlier. We're growing at the fastest pace since 1957-58, but that was following the Suez Canal crisis and the Hungarian Revolution. So that was like a humanitarian issue, and it was related to an external event. This is a policy decision. Since 1946, net international migration as a share of the existing population has averaged about 0.5% a year. Last year it was over 3%. So net international migration has been running at 6 times the post-1946 average.
Wow.
And what does the academic literature say about the relationship between immigration and living standards? That overall it's neutral. It's a neutral effect overall, that net international migration has really, it's a bit of a wash when it comes to per person GDP. Now it does raise GDP, and the federal
more activity.
And the federal government has become obsessed with juicing top line GDP through using population growth. And the province as well has been talking about how the economy is growing, but it's all population growth. Productivity has been falling. Business investment is very, very poor. In fact, nationally, if you look at it, the capital stock per worker, so this is the amount of tools, machinery, equipment, innovation, technology, and you divide that by the number of workers that we have, it's been falling since 2015. Now, I've been an economist for a quarter of a century. I never even thought that was possible, that a country could have a shrinking capital stock. So workers are going out to work each day, and each year they have less equipment to use, less technology, less tools. Of course, the amount of income that they can generate is going down each year because companies are not even investing enough to keep up with depreciation. And the reason they're not doing that is because they don't see Canada and BC, excluding the 4 mega projects, as an attractive place to do business. We're just not competitive anymore.
So one of the other numbers that I found disturbing was how far down we were on the innovation ranking index.
That's right.
You know, we got smart people here in British Columbia, and BC is known quite well as being a very good incubator of ideas. And yet we're still so low on this innovation ranking. What happens?
There's a few parts to that. One is that our thinking about research and development has really just been based around universities. It's been really a supply side kind of approach. Just we'll generate some ideas and hopefully they'll get commercialized. We haven't focused enough on the demand side, right? If you want to be successful as a business in Canada, do you really need to have the latest technology, the latest business practices and all that? Not really, because we're not that competitive. The level of competition, in international markets, within the provinces, it's not that strong. We've got lots of government-owned businesses, lots of government monopolies, lots of restrictions on trade between provinces, restrictions in product markets about what you can sell and do, lots of red tape. So, you don't feel the need to be on the cutting edge, as you would say. And the academic evidence bears that out. So there was a study by Wollongong from the Statistics Canada looking at the productivity at the firm level. And he's looking at sort of the top 10% of businesses versus the other 90%. And globally, that has widened. Like the top 10% of businesses globally have moved ahead in terms of the productivity. So the output they can generate per hour of work has grown faster than for the other 90% of firms. And then if you look at Canada, there's a widening gap between the best companies in terms of productivity and the rest, but also a gap between our best and the best in the world. So our best
are sagging behind the rest of the world. Oh
so even when you look at it at a firm level, you can see that this is what's going on. And then if you look, you're someone like me, you look at the data in aggregate and you see that in most industries, according to Statistics Canada, in most industries, productivity has been falling or has been stagnant since the mid-2010s. We haven't gone anywhere. And I think the main reason is in terms of growing real incomes, we've taken our eye off the ball.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Are you disheartened about where we're at and the likelihood that we're going to change this trend? Because I'm hearing this conversation more and more, and I'm beginning to see that there doesn't seem to be a willingness or even a desire to change the trajectory that we're on.
Well, again, if you look at this index, social and environmental, we do well. We're above average compared to international peers. But if you look at business well-being, we're about average. You look at economic well-being, we're below average. Now, why will people start to care more about those other two categories? I think one reason is that this credit boom that we've all been enjoying really for the past 20 years, but particularly since the pandemic. I mean, in July of 2020, the Bank of Canada said, if you're thinking of taking out a mortgage, now's a good time. They gave forward guidance and they said, you can be confident that interest rates will remain low for a long time. And people took that seriously. If you look at the amount of leverage, the amount of mortgage debt in Canada over the 3 years subsequent to that, it increased by around $500 billion. So we went from owing 1.6 trillion on our real estate stock to owing 2.1 trillion on our real estate stock in 3 years. Now, you can't have a 1/3 increase in the amount of leverage against an asset class and not see the spectacular increases in established or resale home prices that we saw. Now, that made some people better off, but made a lot of other people, renters in particular and first-time buyers, much worse off because they need to save a lot more. Now, those people who did borrow during that period of time, I mean, interest rates were so low, they were zero in nominal terms. They were a little bit above, slightly positive, 1 to 2% for a mortgage in 2020, 2021, and some of 2022. But if you adjust for inflation, it was actually negative.
Yeah.
So, you've got negative real mortgage rate, negative inflation-adjusted mortgage rates. It's perfectly rational for people wanting to load up on mortgages during that time, and they did. My point is that we're now moving into 25 and 26. About a quarter of all mortgages will come due for refinancing next year, and about a third in 2026. And all those mortgages that were taken out at one something will be refinanced at possibly 4 or 5, maybe even 6%. So the amount of household disposable income that will be going towards servicing that debt is going to go up. And right now, the debt servicing ratio, so this is interest payments plus principal payments to the mortgage, is at the highest level since we've kept records, which was 1990.
Yeah.
People talk about, back when interest rates were 17%, they can remember in the early 1990s. We're past that in terms of what households already are having to put into their mortgage. The interest costs component, the interest payments, are back to where they were in 1996. And that's before about half of mortgages come due for refinancing in the next 2 years. That's now. So my very long answer to your question is that I think that people are going to be very focused on the fact that their real incomes are not growing as their mortgages come due for refinancing. Because the money's just not there.
Right, and that in turn will put pressure on political leaders to start to focus on what is a malaise at the moment, but could very easily become a serious problem.
Yeah, in the political polling that I've seen, it mostly shows up as cost of living is kind of the line that shows up. But that there's a whole lot under that. It's really the lack of real income growth, at the price of things. I mean, the price of food's gone up by, almost a quarter in the last 3 years. So that is a significant cut to your disposable income. You've got much less money left over for other things. Now, just to be clear, when we put this index together, we've got these 3 categories there that we think together help shape people's quality of life: business well-being, economic well-being, and social and environmental well-being. 12 equally weighted indicators grouped into those 3 groups. It's not that those other things aren't important. It's just that income isn't everything in life, but it really helps when you go to the grocery store.
Thank you, David. And I'm hoping that more conversations like this will get people talking more and hopefully start to move us in a direction that can have a more positive conversation when we revisit this topic in the future.